opportunity today. We have joining us Mon Trice. Mon Trice is an accomplished children's book author. We also know her as a voice and advocate for justice and freedom as we highlight the importance of not only Black History Month, but the importance of Black books. So by introduction, we know Mon Trice, as you can see on the photos behind her, as an accomplished children's book author. And just as a brief introduction, Mon Trice was born in East St. Louis, Illinois, and spent most of her childhood there. At an early age, she chose books over toys and often made up stories and plays. During the teenage years, the family moved to St. Louis, where she attended Melville Senior High School. After receiving her BS in psychology from Southeast Missouri State University, she obtained her MBA degree from Lindenwood University. Mon Trice is a publisher, author of 3 amazing children's books, so make sure you check them out. A poet and co-founder of Focus GSD, a life skills consulting company. Mon Trice is a humanitarian at heart, offering her time and energy to such causes as March of Dimes, Jump Rope for the Heart, Junior Achievement, and Delta Sigma Theta Sorority, Inc. Her entrepreneurial spirit and desire for children's literature to reflect on our pluralistic society is the passion that drives her. She believes children should see themselves reflected in the literature they read. Inadequate representation, in some cases, lack of representation, sends a damaging message of being unimportant. It is her firm belief that if elementary literacy statistics can be used to forecast the numbers of prisons to build, those same statistics can be used to keep those cells empty, one book at a time. And we know this based upon the research that shows that you can use 3rd grade reading levels and scores to predict the prison population 10 years out. So she finds it criminal, notice this, to hand a child a sentence before you teach him to read one. Mon Trice now resides in St. Louis, Missouri with her husband and son. So welcome, my name is Dr. Artika Tyner. I'm the founder of Planting People Growing Justice Leadership Institute. We are happy to be here with you today. This is really a dream come true as we launch Community Creates, a youth literature program. Our goal is really to spark the interest of young people to be able to write their own stories and narratives that reflect the beauty of African American culture, our heritage, our roots, and our background. So we are grateful to the Minnesota, and it's our Metro Regional Arts Council, for funding this 2-part workshop series that will conclude with a youth writing competition. So you'll find out more. But a part of the workshop is to ensure that we have some practical skills to be able to write our stories, to be able to share our own narratives in creative and powerful ways. And I could not think of anyone else but our very own Mon Trice to join us on this journey, to shed light and spread knowledge in some unique ways. So my first question for you is, what does Black History Month mean to you?
Okay, so Black History Month, it's a time that we formally pause and reflect on the great contributions that African Americans have made to this country, to this world. Also a time to celebrate. My hope is that we get past that and we start to celebrate all year long, and that our history is given equal amount of real estate in academia and our history books, because make no mistake, Black history is American history. It's very much a part of that, and you can't really separate that, although it has been separated. So once we get to a point where we're able to celebrate our cultural differences with the same intensity of celebration and importance, then we would have begun to make a step in the right direction. What I have seen is that Black history across classrooms are more geared toward Black children versus all children. And so I think that's also something very important, a switch that we need to make in our schools, is that Black history isn't just for Black children. Black history is for children to understand, like, what something different, something outside of your culture. We were talking a little bit earlier about the importance of representation, African-American representation in children's literature. So there is Redeem Sims Bishop. She is a wonderful scholar, and she talks about the importance of representation in kidlit. So your bookshelf should be diverse. You should have a combination of what's called windows and mirrors. So mirror books reflect your culture, your family, your essence in those pages. Window books allows you to see inside of another person's culture and their family and their reflection of themselves and their community. So when you have a good balance of both, you're able to see the world and society correctly as it is because it's balanced. But once you have a book full of just windows, it sends a dangerous message of I'm not important enough to write about. And it's a message that you receive so subtly, you don't understand that you're receiving it until you start to see books that do reflect yourself and you realize you haven't seen them before. It's kind of like when you need glasses, but you haven't had glasses, and finally you get your glasses and you see everything so much clearly, like, oh my gosh, those green globs, those were leaves on the trees. So clarity is provided when you are able to have balance in your literature and you're able to have proper representation. So it's extremely important. We're building young people. We want to build very strong, mentally solid people. So it's important to the psyche of our children and also for those who are not African Americans not to have an inflated sense of self.
I don't know about you, but I feel like I have to have the pen and paper out when I'm spending time with mine to get those practical examples on how not only we can be better educators, better parents, and more engaged with the learning experience. And just note as well, I want to make sure that we're teaching our children and really providing a platform of understanding of connecting those dots. Let's make sure that we also acknowledge the founder of Black History Month, Dr. Carter G. Woodson, as well. So we want to make sure that we're connecting it to the history, connecting it to what he was seeking to do, to celebrate in many ways our unsung heroes and sheroes and tell their story in that same uplifting way that Mon is doing today. So really living in that legacy of leadership and making an impact. So my next question for you, and just to make it very specific, why do Black books matter?
No one can really tell your story like you, right? Like, so no matter how long I've known you, Artika, or if I grew up with you, even if I'm a sibling, we have the same parents, the same environment, we're not going to have the same story. Like, even if I do a really great job of telling your story, no one tells it like you. So it's not only important to have Black books, it's also important to have Black voices behind those books. It's important because we're here, we exist, we are important, and our stories need to be told, and there needs to be a record of those things. And again, not just civil rights and slavery type books. We need adventure also. That's another thing I find lacking in our kids lit. We talk a lot about skin, we talk a lot about hair, we talk a lot about books. That's why I opened my favorite author, rest in peace, Eric Jerome Dickey. Sometimes you just want to get away and get involved in a totally different world. We need to supply those things for our children because first and foremost, we want to make sure that they fall in love with reading. Because if you fall in love with reading, then you'll fall in love with learning. That's the ultimate goal. That's not the first goal. The first goal really is to entertain in this space. Because once you capture them, that's getting their attention, then you've got them. I remember the first time I fell in love with reading. I was 14. Like, I always liked to read, but when I fell in love with reading was the summer of 85. There wasn't much going on. My mom had a box of books. And the first two books I read that summer was Stephen King's, oh gosh, I can't remember the name of it, but it was a telepathic story where a girl was able to move physical items with just thinking about it. Gosh, what is the name? Firestarter is what it was. And the other was Kaleidoscope by Danielle Steele. So it felt like watching a movie in my own time is what it felt like. So we want to get kids to that moment where they feel like, oh my gosh, I can pick up a book and go into this world and experience it, you know, and it also develops literacy, but that's a side product. We want them to fall in love with it first.
Let's make sure we emphasize that falling in love with the experience
Yes.
and the connection with books. And a part of it is definitely the diversity in the genre of books and the options that are available. So I want to do a quick shout out to our community partner and colleague, Dara Beavis of Wise Inc., because she's doing an exceptional series. So Mom, once I get them in hand, I'll send some books your way. It's a Queen
Yes.
series. So it's a bit of adventure. And her first book starts with Queen Amina, to tell that legacy of history, connecting us across the diaspora. So those pieces of making sure that we have diversity in skin tones and backgrounds and genres, I think is key and essential. Hence why yours truly, one of my favorite classes in college, was related to women in science fiction, because I found the love for kindred and our very own
Oh my gosh, I
Octavia
just read
Butler.
that. Yes,
Yes,
I love her.
changed my life. And it's
Yeah.
informed my work even as a civil rights attorney, as a law professor, in every aspect of my life, of giving that framework of Afrofuturism. And for our young people, it's a sense of I was, I am, I will be. How do we have the beauty of, we talked about in Wakanda, to create, to build, and to transcend time and space and build the history, the culture, and the future collectively. So I really want our young people to make sure that you're imagining and unleashing that creativity. If you're looking for a new dimension, check out Octavia Butler's work. So,
and I'm glad you
very
brought that
appreciative.
up about Black Panther. That just shows you how much representation is missing. The way that we all clung to that movie and made it what it was, we hadn't seen it before. We had not seen like pretty much an all Black cast in a major movie like that. Like we wanted, like, oh my gosh, it was a unicorn when it shouldn't be, right? It shouldn't be, but it was. So that just goes to show you how much it's needed, not only from, you know, a children's perspective, but as adults as well. And not only do we need to tell our own stories, and our stories need to be read and need to be heard, there needs to be cultural competency across the entire industry, across publishing. Because sometimes you come up with, there are people, illustrators, for example, who have no clue how to create Black characters. They'll take a character and paint them brown. I absolutely hate that. I won't hire anyone like that. And I would suggest that you broaden your spectrum of creating people. Like there isn't really a default. I mean, there is, but there shouldn't be. So I end up being drawn to African American illustrators because obviously you're going to learn how to draw yourself, but it's important that our editors and our illustrators and our art directors are culturally competent, so that you bring the most genuine and authentic like story to life.
So we're hearing it time and time again. We have a common thread of the importance of representation matters. So this is also for the young people who are tuning in. It's not just about writing the book as an author. We also, and you heard it from Mon Trice's mouth, we need illustrators of color as well. I've been looking for the data, in full disclosure, to be able to document that piece of the narrative as we shift in this movement around needing diverse books. So please, illustrators in the comments, make sure you share about your work, make sure you share your name. We are always, through our publishing company, looking to work with Black illustrators as well. So we are excited for that connection, but we also know that there's a dire need to make sure that we are reflecting with accuracy, with the beauty and the love, with the characters that we bring alive on the pages as well. So with that, why children's books? We feel your passion, but why children's books?
I had no intention to be a children's book author, none. I was always one to write. I've been writing ever since I could hold a pencil, all sorts of things. I've written plays. I actually started our newspaper in my middle school. So I've always written. I've been a columnist for a Midwest paper in Illinois called Pure News for decades before I stopped. And then I started writing children's books. So I got into children's book because I had a child that was an emerging reader. And we were reading Junie B. Jones because I found her to be extremely funny. My husband later was like, you know, Junie B. Jones is cool. I get that he likes it, but where are the books that look? And I'm like, you know what, you have a point. Like, I didn't even think about it at the time. I was just glad that we're reading, right? So we go to the bookstore and I'm looking for children's books that have African American boys on the cover. At the time, there was Snowy Day. You know, that was 60s.
A classic.
It's a classic, but it's almost the only one. Right? And there was Little Bill that was out of stock. And so the clerk was feverishly looking for me, and you could tell more and more. You could see her awareness coming to light that, oh my gosh, we don't have any. She's like, surely she's looking. I mean, she is really diligently looking through the inventory, trying to come up. She goes, my gosh, I don't think we have very much. And I'm like, wow. So my sister has 4 boys, and her children are about 3 or 4 years older than my son. So I called her up. I'm like, what are you guys reading? And she's like, it's Slim Pickens. And so she pointed me to Sharon Draper. And there's a series called Ziggy and the Black Dinosaurs. So we got off into that. And I'm glad that it was a series that gave us more than just one book. And I could see him make a shift when we start reading the book. Like, there was kind of like, oh, you know, these are Black kids that I'm reading about. And he enjoyed it as well as he did Junie B. Jones. But again, that's when your shelf needs to be diverse. They need to see more than just one. And there was a project that we were on, Room to Read, which really gets it about diverse books and strongly believes in you telling your own stories. So that's how I got into kids' books. I had a kid that needed a diverse book, and my sister actually really was the one who pushed me. She's like, well, if you need a book and it's not written, she's like, this isn't me speaking, this is a Toni Morrison quote, then it's your responsibility to write it. And at first I was like, girl, please, I'm gonna find some books, and I couldn't. So I ended up writing them. So behind me are my first 2 books. The very first one was Changing Seasons. It's about a little girl. It's her first day of school, and she has to decide which season is her favorite and why. And as she goes through the season in her mind, the reader has a front row seat inside her thoughts. And each season is sprinkled with a little of African-American culture, as well as pointing out that we tend to have extended kinship ties. So you meet a brand new person in her very small nucleus family circle as you go through the seasons. So it is a concept book about seasons, but it's also very rich with African-American culture. And the other is Candace Crash Course. It's about a little boy who his brothers are riding their bikes and they're popping wheelies and doing all sorts of bike tricks. And he wants to join them, but he doesn't know how to ride his bike, and they don't have time to teach him. So he decides he's going to take it upon himself to teach himself. And he has mishap after mishap. And the more he tries to correct it, the worse it gets, until finally he meets a very unlikely person to encourage him to keep going. And in the end, he is victorious, but it takes you through the community. I didn't realize at the time, the entire community that's showcased in this book, it's all male. So it's another thing that you rarely see an African-American boy on the cover, but throughout the book, it's different male influences to help this young boy. And also it was very important to me that the character have locks, because I started to see in our society where we were criminalizing and weaponing hair. You know, you're fitting the description. It's like dreadlocks were a bad thing. It's like, no, it's a hairstyle. So when you open the book and you meet his brothers, the main character has dreadlocks. He has a brother that has a huge afro, another that has cornrows, and one that has a very short cut. So I wanted to showcase how different we are, even in the same family, not just with our hairstyles, but also with our skin tones. Very rarely a family that's the exact same color from mom to dad and siblings. We're chocolate rainbow. So I wanted to send all of those very subtle messages in that one book. And I think we did really well with doing that.
Oh, I wrote that one down. Chocolate rainbows. That just
Yes.
that sounds magical. And I love it as well. So the attorney in me would be remiss if I did not highlight for us, make sure in your state and your jurisdiction that you are supporting the Crown Act, which fights against discrimination on hairstyle. So it's an important issue that oftentimes we don't talk about, but a part of how to preserve culture and history is an identity, and it shows up in our facial features, shows up in our skin tones, but it shows up in our hair as well. So check out the Crown Act also. So here it is. Many folks, of course, want to know your story, but they want to know, they feel like what your sisters say. They feel that they have a book within them. So give us a sense of, how do you write a children's book? And I know you have 5 best practices for us as well. Can you incorporate this in to give us a sense of, how do we get started when we have that book in our soul?
Sure. So I'll start with what not to do first. So usually, a lot of the times when I hear people say, oh my gosh, I have an idea for a children's book, we tend to think as an adult. When we have an idea, what really happens is we think we have a lesson that we want to teach children. And that is what I refer to as writing down to children, when we really need to write up to them. So remember early at the top of the broadcast, I said we need to first entertain. They're already being taught. They're already being told what to do, what not to do at school and at home. In their books is where they need to find the adventure and the love of reading. So if you have an idea, I want you to shelve that idea. It's not that it's not a good idea, but it more than likely needs to be developed. Even when I have great ideas, they need to be developed. So the first thing is, you probably haven't read a children's book in years, but because they're short and simple, we think that it's super easy, and it's not. The truth is, children's books are no easier to write than books for adults. We still need very strong characterizations. We need fresh, exciting plots, lots of action and clear, precise language, as well as the ability to see the world through a child's eyes. That's what's typically missing in some of those first manuscripts. It's like, well, you're viewing it through your eyes. It's like what they tell you when you're expecting a baby or you're planning your family, is to get down on your hands and knees and crawl through your house and see all of the dangers that may be lurking for the baby. So you do the same thing with kids. You get down on their level and see what they see from their point of view. And that is from where you write. You write upwards and not downwards. So that's the first thing. We don't want to be too preachy. You don't want to get in your mind that it's easy, because it's not. Because you don't have as much real estate to write, you still have to have a transition with that character. You still have to make it exciting. There still needs to be a climax. It's not just simply just telling a theme. You actually have to have like a real story. So that's the first thing. It's not as easy as it looks. The second is, we think that because we're adult, we have so much experience and we know a lot. We know more than our children's readers, and you want to use your books to teach them and to explain good behavior. This isn't the place for that. Again, no one likes to be preached at, and kids, again, are preached to enough. So again, we want exciting plots. The message, which there is a message in most books, but it comes as a consequence of characters' actions and choices within the story. So the message can't be the book. The story has to be the book, and the message is the byproduct of that, if that makes sense. So rather than, let's say, Cannon is brave, no, that's the message. You need to show me, by placing him in a certain situation that is entertaining, you need to demonstrate that bravery instead of just telling me, oh, Cannon is brave, and narrating from like a God point of view. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yes.
So let's see, what else? Spend time with kids. They're not the same. I guarantee you they are not the same. I don't care how many girls you know that are 5, they are all different. So we need to spend time with children, especially now. So it's fine to draw from your own personal experience. I certainly did it when I was writing, but these kids aren't the same as it was when we're growing up. They're not even experiencing things the same. We never went through a pandemic before. We didn't grow up with iPhones and tablets. So they're not experiencing the world in the same way that we experience the world. So you need to spend time with children and to listen to their conversations and how they rationalize things, how they're perceiving the world that they're in, the conversations and interactions that they're having with each other. So spending time with kids, and then get clear about who you're writing to, not just children, because that's a broad spectrum from 0 to 18. which group of children are you writing to? Because a book that's entertaining to a 3-year-old is not entertaining to a 10-year-old and vice versa. So you need to get very clear on who is this particular book for, right? And the other point, number 4, is point of view. So there are a lot of would-be writers that don't understand the concept of point of view as it applies to fiction. So it's very crucial when you are able to put yourself inside of your middle grader or your young adult character in either first person or third person limited view, when you really allow your readers to see the world through your character's eyes, mind, and heart, you will have gone a long way toward capturing and holding the reader's attention. In the past, most books in general use an omniscient point of view in which the story is told by a voice that's separated from its characters. But it remains like an outside story, and they know everything that's about to happen with the character and the events of the story. While picture books, really, they kind of still do hold this particular voice. Books for older children, like your young adult children, they usually offer a first person or third person limited point of view. So when you're first starting to write, I would suggest that you write from each point of view and then figure out which one gives you your strongest story. But then look through each manuscript to make sure that you were consistent with your voice, whichever voice that you chose, that you don't switch back and forth. And believe it or not, it's very easy to do if you're not used to writing. And then my last point is, don't be boring. Kids are very honest. They don't like the book. They don't like it. It was boring. There was no suspense. They need that too. They need that element of surprise. They want to happily turn pages. They, like, for example, The Cat in the Hat. The conflict between the cat and the kids, and the suspense coming from watching them figure out how they're going to clean up all this mess before mom gets home, it leaves you in a state of wondering and suspense. So it's like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? You need that in your story. And your story is going to be short because you've got 24 to 36 pages to tell it, and you still need to leave room for illustration. So readers need characters that they care about and reasons to worry about them. And in the end, they need to be kind of changed somehow. Okay, so that's what not to do. What to do, 3 best practices: read a lot of children's books, a lot of them. Just go take the day at the library, or I think there's even online libraries now, and read, and just read a lot of what's happening right now and what's out there. Go to your bestsellers list, read those books so you can get a feeling for what kids are absorbing today, and then put your own spin on it. Put your idea out there in that same vein, not to copy anyone or anyone's style, but just so that you understand the industry and the audience that you're writing to. The next best practice would be spend time with kids close to the age that you're hoping to write for. Talk to them about their lives, their families, their relationships, their hopes and their dreams. Listen, I love talking to kids that are right around 5 or 6. And I ask them adult questions just to see what the perception is about the world around them, or if they're even aware. And sometimes you get some jewels dropped on you by a 4 or 5-year-old, or you get a totally different perspective of how they're interpreting what's happening around them. So read a lot, spend a lot of time with kids. And then my last is to remember, whatever story that you end up writing, it needs to have a clear beginning, a clear middle, and a clear end. There needs to be a story arc. What's the conflict? If you can't point out the conflict in your own story, you need to start over. There needs to be a conflict. Like, what's happening? And it needs to happen right away. Like, what's going on with this character? What do they want? How has the character changed? And then when you start a story, you want to arrive late in your scene, and you want to leave early. We don't need to know how they got to school or what they ate for breakfast, unless breakfast is a part of the story. We don't need all of that other stuff. You hit them right between the eyes and grab their attention, and you hold on to it all the way through the ride of the entire story. So those are my 5 tips of what not to do, and then the 3 best practices of what to do.
Thank you. So I hope that you were able to capture those. You got what not to do and some best practices on what you should be doing. And for our young people who are joining us today, I want to encourage you, you have the opportunity, a unique opportunity and vantage point. I want you all to reimagine. I want you to use your creativity. And I want you to write your own story. You know, as adult authors of children's books, we're trying to, as Mon has outlined, we're trying to get into your shoes. We're trying to understand your vantage point, but you're close to it. So tell us what you see, what you hear, what you feel. And I'll, in full disclosure, I'll tell you one of my challenges with my early writing in children's books. I was writing it as if I was writing another research paper. So not only was it boring, it wasn't for the right age group. So please make those distinctions. Who are you trying to reach with your books? What's the language that they're speaking? What are they thinking about? Even what is the reading level? So when I think about those pieces, I remember I got a lot of those hesitant laughs. No one told me, but my mother always tells me straight. She was like, that reads like a dissertation, like it's for your doctoral studies. That is not for kids. And you know, it was hard to hear, but it radically transformed my life. Yeah, because it made me go back and do my own homework and get beyond that long list of don'ts that you just gave and those do's to be able to let the story speak, let the magic really unfold. So I'm encouraging our young people, speak in your own voice.
Mm-hmm.
Use the descriptors that you would use. And I highly encourage you. One of the children's book authors that does this brilliantly in poets is Kwame Alexander.
Mm-hmm.
Talks in the voice where you feel like you're a part of. Only I wish when I had those books when I was younger, but you're a part of the conversation. You're a part of the experience. So really make your story come alive.
Yeah,
So
he does do that. I think he was the author. It was one book that I was reading, and there was a barbershop scene, and he said something about how the cut looked on his dome. We know what that is. That is such a cultural word that I was like, oh, like I was struck by that because that is us. You know what I'm saying? So it's like you're able to do it, and then those who are reading the book as a window book, they can still use the context tools to understand that, oh, he's talking about the shape of his head. So I absolutely love when you can do that. And please understand, if someone is revising your work, that's a good thing. You don't get to just write. Rare, super rare. It almost doesn't exist. There's at least 17, 19 revisions that we had on my last book, because you're not just looking for spelling and grammar, you're looking for tone, you're looking for sentence structure. Are you writing this character too old? Are they 7 and you're writing them like they're 9? You may think there's not much difference there, but there's a huge difference there. There's a huge developmental difference there. So you need different eyes, and professionals don't skip a step, because I see that too. It's like, oh, it's children's book, the words are easy, I don't need an editor. You need an editor. You need a professional to look at your book and make sure that the tone is right, that it's culturally competent, that there's no spelling errors, there's no grammatical errors. Are the page turns right? Are the pages weighted enough? And by weight, I mean, are there too many words on page 3 and a single sentence on page 4? There's a science and an art to this. So it takes more than just an author to bring a book to life. And I understand in the beginning you may have to wear all hats, but find someone that can advise you or even assist you with bringing the book to life. You want a quality product, not just a brown product.
agreed. So that process on making sure that the product, the final outcome, is something that you can be proud of. And remember, as Mon outlined, so we can be those lions and lioness, right? So we can make sure that we're telling our story accurately in a way for generations to come, that they'll pick up that book, they'll pick up the changing seasons and say, this is about me. I have an understanding. And the beauty of the work is both the illustration and the words on the page. So we want to make sure that we take the appropriate level of time, care, detail, and love to make it all come together. So give us a sense then, what is your writing process like? And what are some of the lessons that we can learn?
I can find inspiration in almost anything if you look and think about it. So I tend to write things down. I wish I was more organized, but I'm not. I have notes in my phone. I have notes in a journal by my bed, particularly where kids are concerned, or when they say things that are like, oh, funny. like I'll write it down and figure out how could I like incorporate this into a story later. So I capture different elements before I sit down to think about like, what do I want to write? And sometimes it comes out of nowhere. Like I wasn't planning on writing this particular story, and then suddenly, boom, it just comes to light. Like Cannon's Crash Course. Someone actually, a friend of mine called me. She called me on a Wednesday, and she said, first of all, let me apologize. I meant to call you last week, but I read this contest and I thought of you. Cheerios was having a contest called Spoonful of Stories. And she said, if anybody could pull this off, you can. I'm like, well, what is it? It's like, well, they're putting stories inside of the cereal boxes and they're having a contest, and it needs to be a really great read aloud story. I'm like, great, send me the information and I'll take a look at it over the weekend. And she goes, well, that's part of the problem. I'm like, what? It was Wednesday and it was due by Friday. So it was like 2 days. I'm like, you want me to write a story in 2 days? And she's like, well, I mean, just give it your best shot. So it was super challenging. And what happened was I kept trying to figure out, what do I want to write about? So originally it was about a little boy tying his shoes. I don't know why I thought that was a great idea, because it's not. It's not. It's just something that they do. It's like, how is this even a story? So I thought, this is dumb. This is not a good idea. It isn't fleshed out well. I don't know what I'm going to do. How do I relate, to kids? And I was just sitting in my living room. I was looking outside and I was watching these kids zoom up and down the street. Right. And one was super struggling. And I thought, that's it. Like, what if? So you can take an ordinary situation and push the boundaries and ask what I call the 5 whys. Like, why is he struggling? You can make that up. Well, why is that particular thing that he's struggling with? Well, he's struggling because no one will help him. Okay, well, why won't anyone help him? Well, because they're busy enjoying their things. Well, why? Like, you keep asking why until you come up with something that's really great and entertaining from a kid's point of view. And if you can't, that's okay. Sometimes things need to sit on the shelf and marinate and just keep going with your ideas. They don't have to make sense at the time. I encourage you to write the silliest things down, because sometimes they end up being brilliant. The last story that I wrote was called The Scoop on Inventors. Originally, the title was Dre and the Inventors. And then there's a scene in there where he's talking about ice cream. And then I said, scoop full of something. I don't know, it was super corny and cheesy, but we played around with it until we had something that was really viable. And we ended with a scoop full of inventors, and everybody on the creative team loved it. And that's what we ran with. So allow yourself to fail. Okay. Don't be afraid of failure or coming up with a bad idea. That's okay. Only a few of them are actually going to make it to the shelf anyway. So allow yourself to create without judgment. That's a huge thing. Create without judgment until you get the piece that you really want.
I like that. That's a perfect reminder. Create without judgment. And I feel like you're looking into my office. I mean, I'm doing a research now on some of the components of Native American history. So I have bookmarks here. I got Post-it notes. I have sheets of paper. I'm dropping them as we go. I encourage writers, and I have notes on my phone. I keep running out of memory. When you find the inspiration, write it down.
Yes.
When you find the inspiration, capture it. So to my young writers, when you find those pieces that inspire you, whether it's a Post-it note, you're snapping a picture or something, keep it along with you to really spark that creativity. So when we're looking at this, can you give us a sense of, we oftentimes hear about writing prompts. What would a writing prompt, since our competition is about Kwanzaa, about history, around culture, how would we start with a writing prompt to begin this process?
Well, one, there's a lot of writing prompts online, but you can create different situations and then write the ending, write what happens. From a kid's point of view, here's a writing prompt. So take your character, make sure you flesh your character out. So developing a character means you give them a profile. You give them a resume of sorts. You know what their room looks like. You know what they like, what they don't like, their favorite food. You're not going to use all the stuff in the story. Building the characters for you. If you know them that well, then you write them authentically. Do they have a birthmark? Do they have asthma? Are they on the track team? Do they want to be on a track team? Who are they closest to? Like, fill all those things out, right? So you create your character. Then create a character exactly the opposite of that character. So these are kids. So now imagine, here's a writing prompt for you. So imagine they were told not to go outside to play because it's raining a little bit, but they sneak to go outside to play anyway. Now they're locked outside and they follow the puppy under the porch to get away from the rain. Now they're stuck under the porch. So write what happens. That's a writing prompt. It's like you've given them a situation. I've handed you the conflict. The conflict is we're in trouble. One, we went outside when we weren't supposed to. Then it started raining. We're locked out. Now we're stuck under the porch. So write the story, what happens. And remember, you have two characters that are polar opposites of each other. So that makes for a really good push and pull story, and just put your imagination to it. So that's a writing prompt for you.
Thank you. So let's apply it. Let's take it to action. I
Oh
know
my
I was thinking to myself, I'll give the two characters two names. We'll say Quasi is the older brother. We'll say then Aquia is the younger sister. They're dealing with that same rain dilemma in the writing prompt. We'll call their dog. So in my latest book, I call the dog Sprinkles. So we'll stick with Sprinkles for a moment. So when you think about that, as they're under that porch, what are they feeling? What are they experiencing? What are they saying to each other? So if we put in the context, and let's put it squarely related to the idea of brother-sister conflict, some of us can resonate with that. What is that experience like? So those, what I oftentimes talk about is kind of those writing prompts are my free writes. I have journals full of them to help get me in that creative space to be able to see more clearly and understand the context of where my characters are. What is Quasi wearing? Quasi might be mad because his fresh sneakers just got messed up. You know, the muddy water, he might be upset. Aquia, she might be frustrated at this point because she's not a rule breaker like Quasi. Maybe she's concerned what her parents will say to her. So that's playing out in her mind. So you see how Mon has introduced us to a process of when I know that the book is ready, I can hear the character speaking to me.
Mm-hmm.
I can hear the responses.
The most ridiculous things to get them from under the porch.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't matter like what it is. Like, is it believable to a kid? Or just let your imagination expand the walls of your imagination and play with it. And it might not be viable at first. You may have like 10 different things, or you may find one that you really hook onto and like, okay, this is it. But think about when you're under stress, like your most unpleasant characteristics come out. So imagine that with someone who perceives the world differently than you, and you're in a confined space, and I'm a kid at that. And it's raining and I'm cold and I want my mom and I feel like I'm in trouble. That just brings everything to a boil. So that your climax is happening right up under that porch. So where you take it from there is totally up to you.
So you see, so a bit of homework for us all. We have writing prompts we can find online. They're oftentimes in our writers' journals and magazines to kind of spark the interest. And don't be bound. Let's take it full circle. Don't be bound with the stories that you're used to reading or writing. Yes. Bring adventure in there. Bring curiosity as you're going through those writing prompts as well. So as we're preparing we're excited. We'll be ready for our next workshop next Saturday, same time at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. We know that we'll have an opportunity to engage more specifically on how do we go from writing prompt to writing our stories in some meaningful ways. So do you have any tips or homework as we bridge between the first workshop and the second workshop? How should we start preparing?
I would say start fresh with a brand new character and develop the character. Take them to the doctor, fill out the forms, like fill out the medical forms, like if there are any allergies or anything like that. Fill out their profile. Do they like school? Do they not like school? Why or why not? Like, make sure you understand those things. What's their family like? Do they have a big family or small family? What does the room look like? What are their hobbies? Learn as much, create a brand new character, not the ones that you already have in your mind, because we all do. We have some sort of, but go and steer in a completely opposite direction and start from scratch and build a brand new character from the ground up. And know them like you know your best friend before we come back to our next workshop. So that's the quest there, to know them inside out. How tall are they? Are they heavy? Are they thin? Are they short? What type of physique do they have? It's not enough to just know, she's got pigtails and, she loves math. Why does she love math? Like, ask yourself the questions of why and how when you answer them. Like, do you know? You want to know your character so thoroughly that there's no question that someone can ask you that you don't have an answer for. Thoroughly I develop my characters, and you'll only use a fraction of it. Remember, the development is for you because it'll come out in your writing. It'll make sense when your character makes a decision. It'll make sense because the background and their essence will dictate how they move and how they speak. So do that before our next workshop.
Okay, so you heard it here. You got a little homework. Understand your character, understand their why, understand their how, understand what motivates them, what makes them cry, what makes them smile, understand who they are and the multiple, the multi-dimensions of each and every one of us. That comes alive in our characters. So I hope that you've enjoyed our time together today. So our inspiration is not just for you to hear about the writing process, but for you to unveil and share your story. So we hope that you take some practical tools with you. We are grateful to Mon Trice for taking and spending some time with us today. We're thankful for our sponsors, the Metro Regional Arts Council, and we look forward to seeing you next week for our next workshop on writing the basics and bringing our story and making it come alive. Thank you. We hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.